Okay, here we are. It's the 12 o'clock rock with Jim Shon, movers, shakers, reformers in Hawaii education. And he's going to be spending time with the legislature next few months, so he won't be here as host on this program, but we thought we'd take a look back retrospectively at all the shows he did over the past year and kind of get a handle on what we have learned, because it's such a difficult topic, it really is. Yeah. How are you, Jim?
I'm good, you know, and I'm glad you asked me to think about these 30 shows and the 30 people.
Yeah.
Because it's always good to step back and reflect on what that means, you know.
Just a short piece is that, you know, I'm a member of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, and they decided to go out with a survey, okay? One of the survey, and I helped write it, one of the survey questions was, you know, rate these priorities for legislative attention, okay? And there's a bunch of them, you know, it was energy, there was transportation, and there was education. There were like at least six of these categories, and education came out number one.
Yes.
I don't fully understand that, but I take it on the result to say that people are very concerned about education. They think it's the number one priority in the state. Do you understand that?
I understand it, number one, because everybody has been through an education system. In some ways, they're replaying the tape of their own and comparing it. They're lamenting things aren't like they used to be in the good old days that never were. But also they're sensing this tension between what I would call a kind of industrial set of thoughts and structures that our school systems are built on, and the information age, which is blowing this into smithereens, atomizing it, fudging the membranes between all kinds of institutions. And in many ways, the people that I interviewed are in the middle of the struggle. Years ago, Lewis Mumford wrote this interesting book called Techniques and Civilizations. And he looked at...
I studied him in American history.
Great, good for you.
The Brown Decades was his most famous book, if you remember.
Well, he looked at large movements over time and how technology changed the way we thought, the way we did everything. And in particular, the shift from an agricultural village, cottage industries, to coal and oil, and everything is big cities. The cities grew enormously.
Government grew too.
Government grew because they had more to do. Public health had to grow by itself. Little string quartets became large symphonies. Smaller music rooms became huge concert halls, and schools became very big. The one-room schoolhouse, forget about it, right? So you had that movement. And now we're moving out of this, but the problem is that so many people don't know it or can't really move it fast enough or cope with a different way of creating quality without being bureaucratic, you know. So then, fast forward a few years after that, 1980s, Alvin Toffler, kind of building on that, wrote
Future Shock
and the third wave. And the third wave is what we're in. And what he saw is, regardless of what culture, nation, whatever you're in, all these new technologies, and this is even before the internet, but he foresaw some of these things. The information age changes everything, right? And so now,
write that down. The information age changes everything. He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing to remember.
Yeah, and from even things like, what is a book, from beginning to end, you know, that's it, versus a research article where every third word is a link and there is no end. Think about that. There is no end, and you can't verify any of it. You know, before it was authentic. Jim Shon wrote this book. You know, he must be smart. He wrote a book. It must be right? That's not true anymore. You know,
no accountability.
That's right. Accountability, authenticity. This is all blown apart, and you have movements of serious educators that say, you shouldn't spend time learning to remember anything. Why? You can look it up on Wikipedia. You know, why remember anything? just be a blank slate and a mouse, and that's it.
You know, that always troubled me about the new math and all
Yeah.
these, now calculators out of the, what, 70s?
Yeah.
You spend a few bucks, you buy a calculator. Then you forget how to do numbers yourself.
That's right.
Most people would have no clue how to multiply, divide, what have you.
Yes. And as a result of this lack of the ability to know and agree on what the facts are, you see people being manipulated enormously in the marketplace and enormously in political life.
Absolutely.
And just to give you a short example, a couple years ago I was teaching a master's in social work class, and these were older students because they all worked. They worked, the class was at night. We're studying social policy, Title IX, equality, gender equality, and I just asked, how many of you in this class recognize the name Patsy Mink, who is the author of this, right? Not a single hand went up. Not a single hand went up. Of people in Hawaii, number one, where's our pride? But where's the sense of knowledge, right? So knowledge
Or history,
becomes an
or
issue.
history.
Or history.
Yeah,
Or
you're doomed
perspective.
to repeat it if you don't
right.
remember it.
Well, we are doomed to repeat it, but we're going to repeat it in a different form.
Yeah.
And can we cope with that repetition is what Obama
Painful,
was talking
expensive,
about.
and inefficient to do that.
That's right, that's right. So this movement from the industrial, and I don't want to overuse that word, but a big school built like a strip mall, where every classroom is about the same size. There are 27.2 students in every classroom, and the chain of command goes all the way up and down for every minor decision, right?
Yeah.
That's an industrial model, right? And to give you another metaphor, a football team is actually an industrial model. Why? You're a right offensive tackle, and you are not a running back, and you are not an end, and you are not a safety, and you are not a quarterback. This is your role. You're compartmentalized, just like the assembly line. I put on the wheels, you put on the steering wheel, somebody else paints the car, right?
What does that do to a student to be in a matrix like that?
Well, I think it means that every subject, and many subjects have their own authentic way of thinking and logic, right? But every subject is disconnected from the other subjects, right? And there's also disconnect with actual performance in the way that people behave as adults. So we know that if you want to become a musician and join the symphony, you don't take a bubble test. Duh. You audition before the educated knowables, the people that know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
You want to join a sports team, you try out.
Yeah.
You want to get into art school, here's my portfolio. You want to get into anything, you demonstrate it, and yet
It's
school.
not only talent, it's interest, it's motivation.
Interest, talent, motivation, grit, persistence, the ability to play with ideas and not be afraid of being slapped because you got the wrong answer, right? It's inquiry-based, it's competency-based, it's
Are you
project-based
saying we've
learning.
lost that?
We're moving towards it, but we're resisting it, right? The best young minds in the state senior science fair are correcting NASA's calculations. The best young minds are mapping how the brain recognizes color, shapes, and movement, and the military wants to know about this, right? We give them zero credit for being good at that science project, right? If you're in the speech league and you can give wonderful presentations and can debate, zero credit. If you make it
When you say credit, you mean school credits?
school credit, it's irrelevant. Your GPA doesn't reflect it. It's not a course, right? It's not an ACT score.
We're behind.
And this is true of many things in education. That for the convenience of the administrators and for budgets, right? We try to do what is easier and affordable. But in fact, the whole child, right? I just recently saw a report, And I think it is actually true with just all the states on what is required for the arts. And what is required for the arts in Hawaii? Nothing. Nothing.
Required in what, as a prerequisite?
Prerequisite to graduate, nothing.
Oh,
We do not require,
and I'm sure you include music when you say that.
absolutely. And yet, schools like the lab school, for example, with less money than most of our DOE schools, right? Same contracts with teachers and whatnot, requires all kinds of visual, pottery, textiles, and performing music. It's a requirement, right? If they can do it in those constraints, we all can do it. And yet by policy, it's not important. It's not important. And so this group of people are involved with that dialogue of not necessarily what is, but what could be.
Let me take it to Hawaii and the difference between HIAS and the public schools. I guess my first question would be, do you believe that the charter schools are a better place to send your kid?
Well, it's sort of like small business, right?
You have a lot of experience with charter schools.
Yes, and it's a little bit like small business. Would you say our small business is successful? Well, some are, some aren't, because they're not part of a single structure, right? So it's leadership, it's community engagement, it's all these things, but structurally, charters are better positioned for the information age. It doesn't mean that they do best on the bubble test, right? It doesn't mean that they'll even manage their resources well.
What's a bubble test?
You know, the SAT, the ACT.
Okay.
You fill in, and the answer is A, B, C, D, E, whatever,
okay.
right?
With the pen or the pencil. Yeah,
That's a paper test, right?
Okay.
Right. They are better positioned for this, and they began as a model for governance. You get to make the decisions at the school level. It's turned into a model of how do we cheat them out of money. You know, that's my particular point of view. And who needs a facility anyway, right?
You know, Linda Lingle, back in 2003, when she took office, had this initiative. She wanted to invest in individual school districts on individual islands.
Yes.
That was one of her campaign points, and she tried. Sort of like Hillary Clinton tried on
Well,
health.
I'll stop you there. I
but
thought it was a stupid idea, and this is why, right?
Okay.
You have the size of a classroom, which is important to some extent. You also have the size of the school, and then you have these districts, right? The most important is the size of the school. What we found is that when we looked all over the U.S. of successful systems, and it was the intimacy of that learning community. All the teachers know all the students, know all the teachers, right? You don't get lost in it, right? The Lingle proposal did not change the fact that there was another bureaucratic thing above it, right? It didn't actually give it the money, right? So when you started asking, what do you gain by having 8 little systems, but they still got to go all the way up to the Board of Ed, you didn't gain anything. Actually, what you gained is another layer of bureaucracy.
She had to set them free.
And she had to set them free. And the real art in the information age, where you have more autonomy in many, many ways, the membranes are porous and all that sort of thing, is how do you have high quality and standards without being overly red taped to death with administrivia, right? And I think many of our guests have pointed out that they felt that there was a top-down culture, and this was constraining the leadership and the innovation and the energy and the love of learning.
When they said that, did they also include HIAS and the private schools?
To some extent, because we did have people involved with the private schools,
Yeah.
and Paul Turnbull of MidPAC Institute.
That's a good example.
He has like 500-600 people coming through his school from all over the mainland every year to see what they're doing. Now they're well funded, of course, but they all are also mixing age levels in projects, right? They're not constrained by you're 14, you're in this class group, end of story, right? And so they've got seniors and sophomores and freshmen maybe working on the same kind of projects together, which means you have a mentoring situation, and you have projects galore, and they have time to work on those projects, and they have been able to get some enormous, wonderful technology where they are contributing to the historic preservation of buildings and artifacts through their laser scanners and whatnot. Now, not everybody has those resources, but is the mindset that I thought was very interesting, right?
When we get back from this break, Jim, I want to tell you my experience in Mid-Bac, and then we can go from there and look at some of the other private schools and the public schools.
Yeah.
We have to see what they're made of. We'll be right back. This is Movers, Shakers, Reformers in Hawaii Education.
Season 1.
Jim Shon.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on ThinkTech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you Center Stage.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Jim Shon. He is the true host of Movers, Shakers, Reformers in Hawaii Education. And we're reflecting on his first season as the host of that show. He's going to go to the legislature for a little while, and then he's going to come back. So I'm telling you about Mid-Pac. I went and made a movie there, and I found, to my great interest, that was it the Weinberg Estate or somebody gave them money to allow every single kid to be issued an iPad. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe less. And those kids knew a lot about iPad. Intuitively, they knew how to deal with them, use them, learn from them, do projects with them. And they taught the teachers, really.
Right.
And now we had teachers and kids together. We had this modular furniture they have over there, this whole kind of free-form group project way of looking at things. It was great. The kids loved it. They were just in seventh heaven with the computers everywhere, doing everything. And that there were some teachers over there who, I mean, they were like you. They were non-stoppable. They were, 24 hours a day. They were into education and making these kids great. And I was really impressed with that. I don't think that happens in every school in the state.
It doesn't happen in every school. It doesn't happen in every private school, right? And what you find is that you find pockets of enormous energy, innovation, thoughtfulness, 21st century information age education, but it's not systematic, right? We are not committed to this, right? Not every school has an art program. Not every school has a band or a chorus or anything else like that. Not every school even takes their kids out to run around the block for, PE class or anything like that, right? So the great dilemma we have is we have a very large top-down Department of Education struggling to try to create a sense of equity of experience. But the equity of experience translates.
Did you say equity? I thought you said uniformity.
No, I said.
It sounded like uniformity of experience.
No, well, that's what equity can turn into, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to say we're going to give everybody a free T-shirt. It's another thing to say it's all going to be the same size, the same color, and we'll decide what's written on it, right? Because it's cheaper to order them that way, right?
Save a few bucks.
Yes, but a lot of the people I interviewed have been or are connected with our Department of Education, as well as charters and Hawaiian education and whatnot. But the Department of Ed people remind us of the flexibility and the leadership that is possible even within that system, right? So part of the issue is the culture that we've built up. The
Very
expectation.
elusive, isn't it?
It is very
You want to
elusive.
change culture, whoa, that's hard.
That's right.
And even if you do change it, it can snap right back like a yo-yo.
That's right. And this is why I have always been sort of attracted to the charter school model, because in my mind, it is the greatest departure from the industrial way of looking at things. Now, you can take many of the private schools, and they are just as traditional as any DOE school. They've just got richer, better, more motivated parents and kids, right? That, and
But you know, I don't see money as a problem here. Why? Because of that survey. Because that survey means to me that people in general would be willing to spend more money. They'd take it off the top. They'd spend money for education. All somebody would have to do, all a political leader would have to do is say, this money is going to improve education in the state. People would be behind that. So what's the next thing? After it's the motivation thing that I think is very hard.
Well, I think part of it is this belief that the only thing we can count on with high quality is if our governmental structures are riding herd over it, right? I'll give you an interesting example. It has been declared that we are in a crisis for Department of Education facilities. And this crisis comes together in several ways in the very hot, crowded Campbell High School, right? 3,000 kids in one high school. Give me a break. You are lost in the crowd easily in a lower socioeconomic community where probably the parents are not home at 3:30 or whatnot whenever the kids get home. They're working 2 or 3 jobs or whatever. And there's just too many crammed onto it, right? And the cost of a new building, just with a half a dozen or whatever classrooms,
take the pressure off,
is $35 million, right? And this is through our procurement code designed for ethics and no conflict of interest and no graft, right? To purchase and build a school, whatever it's called, $1 million a classroom, right? However, our nonprofit organizations, which are often extensions of government and government type services, they are given grant and aids. They're not covered by the procurement code. They can go out and buy it on the free market, right? They can build a charter school at a fraction of the cost that the DOE can build, right? And in part because...
Why don't we do that?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because interestingly enough, sitting in the offices of the Committee on Ways and Means and Finance are all these grant and aid applications by nonprofits. And just the other day in the DOE briefing, one legislator asked, what's the difference between when you bid on a government DOE school contract and somebody in the private sector? We don't know, right? It's sitting right in their offices, because all the budgetary information to justify getting $1 million
This is a grant and aid application.
Grant and aid application, right? We have demonized grant and aids. We've demonized them through this, through the initiative on preschools. Oh, they're terrible. They're going to be teaching kids, and a lot of misinformation, intentional misinformation, was put out on how bad it would be if we gave money to preschools to build facilities for preschool kids, right? And they really are an extension of our commitment to education, but we don't see them. We see them as alien, right? Yeah. And so we could actually, down the road from Campbell, start or have another campus of a charter, give them enough grant and aid money to build something and alleviate the pressure at a fraction of the cost, not $1 million a classroom.
I told you about Steve Chamberlain. It was only a week or so ago. One of our directors pointed him at the show, so we interviewed him, and to my interest and delight, he came and said that he was a local boy, went to Roosevelt High School, went on the mainland, made a lot of money, taught business in Berkeley, and then spends his time in educational philanthropy. And he builds schools for school districts. He's a contractor. He's had years of experience as a contractor. They roll their equipment in, they build a school in 8 months, big school.
Turnkey.
Turnkey, here it is, here's the key.
Right.
There are people around like that, and he would be delighted. I think one of the issues for a guy like that, though, is he's going to run into bureaucracy as sure as you and I are sitting here. That's the problem.
Well, I think what he should do, without knowing enough about it, right, which educators are always talking, right, without knowing enough about it, he should build a school and then sell it to the DOE at its actual cost. Or rent it.
Yeah.
Or rent it.
Yeah.
You know, government is renting stuff all over the
And
place.
rent it really cheap, really cheap.
Rent it at not at price, but at cost.
Yeah.
Right. Give back to the community. Here's a school near Campbell. Turnkey. You know, it only cost me $500,000 per classroom, not $1 million. Here it is.
Yeah.
You want to rent it from me? Fine.
Yeah.
You know, the new world is not buying hard stuff. It's giving them the hard stuff and buying the software afterwards.
Right. It's just like computers.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a Xerox machine. We just have a contract for the toner. Right. And I'll make money
It's the same thing.
forever.
I got a question on Twitter for you. Hey, Jim and Jay, can you analyze for a moment the successes or misses of Evergreen State College method of education? You have reaction to that?
The answer is no, I cannot, because I don't know enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me move on to you know, the public schools in general. You know, something you said at the very beginning of the show has been troubling me, and I'm sure a lot of other people for a long time. You know, we lost intimacy, which is an operative word in this discussion, and we've gained industrial and bureaucracy and layers of you know, of avoiding the issue. Okay, and the question is, how do we get back to that? You talk about anecdotal things, but it's a larger problem than anecdotal. We have to do sweeping reform. We have to dig that sucker up and rebuild it, rethink it, make a whole new world of education. Otherwise, I mean, I think this state is at great risk of people who, A, leave, you know, from the highest schools mostly, but other schools too, or B, they're ill-equipped. They're ill-equipped to deal not just in business or in a demanding career, but in life. They don't have the goods. They don't have the skills. They walk out the door of high school and they're ill-equipped. And C, if they assume they are equipped, they go to the legislature and get elected and they're ill-equipped to run the state. You know, as well as elected
That's
officials.
democracy, man.
It's democracy. It's what it is, but we really can't afford that in our laboratory, our civic laboratory here in Hawaii. So if I give you all the power and I tell you to put your left foot forward, what's the first step you take?
The first step I would take is I would take the amount of money we calculate that we spend per pupil for everybody, right? For operations and everything else. And I would actually convert all the public schools to a per pupil allocation. In other words, I walk in the door as a student, in walks $10,000, right? Now, if I think I need help at a district or other level, they come to me and say, we'd like to sell you our services, right? In other words, it's not you're paying for them up front, but rather, can I do it myself with my community, right? So the first thing is to decentralize financial control over those resources and give a lot more decision-making, power, respect, trust to the school level, to the teachers, to the school community councils.
This is way beyond Linda Lingle.
Well, no, it's a charter school model. That's what it is, right?
Okay.
But instead of giving them $6,000, you give them a fair amount, right? And secondly, you start peeling back the policies that are long-standing within the Board of Education that explicitly say this school community council should have no power to do this or that. You must get permission from the complex area superintendent to change your bell schedule.
Why don't we just make all the schools charter schools?
Well, I don't think it fits necessarily. The notion that everything has to be the same model is part of our intellectual dilemma. We think, oh, it's either all got to be this or all got to be that or that. No, think about colleges. No one would say all colleges have to reflect Evergreen State's model, right?
But
That'd be crazy.
Doesn't that assume, though, that I have free choice? That is a charter school over here, and there's a public school over there, and I can actually pick and choose.
Well,
do I really have that freedom?
Well, here's the thing, is that you have a commitment to students and parents living in a certain area. We're going to give you a free education K-12, free, right? And if you live in this area, we provided the school, right? Now in my ideal world, there are enough charters nearby around that offer a real choice of the type of education, the approach of education, everything else, right? And we don't yet, we're only 5% of all the public school students in the state, right? Interestingly enough, 5% of the students, but for federal funds, charters only get 1.8% of all the federal funds that come to education. That's a huge difference, right?
A disability.
And they don't get 5% of the general funds either, right? And what that really means, Jay, is that as a charter, I can't afford to buy the music teacher necessarily, right? So
unfair.
Money is...
Why don't we equalize them? At least I put them on the same footing.
Well, that's why, and there's always this debate. The DOE calculates a per pupil amount, but the charters get allocated, and they get allocated less, and the accountants get their fingers in it, and they try to prove that apples equals oranges and that sort of thing. That's my point of view. Not everybody accepts it. I accept that I am not accepted, right?
That's Jim Shon.
Yeah.
And he's the host of Movers, Shakers, Reformers in Hawaii Education. And we're here doing a retrospective on his first year of those shows. We're going to take a short break and come back. I'd like to ask him, what level of educational expertise do we have here in Hawaii? And should we be shooting for a higher level as educators? I think I know his answer. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. I'm IC Davidson. Thanks for tuning in to ThinkTech Hawaii. One of the things that we do here, or the thing that we do here, is promote civic engagement in Hawaii. What does that mean? We want to talk about things that people want to hear about, and we want you to engage us and be part of that conversation. One of the ways that you can do that is by joining in during our live show via Twitter. How do you do that? Well, you get on the interwebs and get Twitter, get an account, and mention us if you have a question. What you'll do is you tune into our show live, tweet us questions, and our hosts and guests will address them accordingly. It's really easy, it's really fun, and I think that your participation in what we're doing here will help us continue the dialogue on very important issues that we're trying to cover. Sustainability, clean energy, you name it, we're on top of it. We want you to be part of what we're doing, because together we'll be able to make things change. Thank you for watching ThinkTech Hawaii, thinktechhawaii.com, weekdays 12 to 5 p.m. That was weird.
Okay, we're back with Jim Shon for the last segment of our show with him today, retrospective on a year of his educational show. So, what level of expertise do we have here? And what do we need to fix? I mean, in terms of the level of expertise, how do we train people? How do we get visionaries, into the process? As you said before, everybody has an educational, they believe they know about education, but it's not really true. How do we get visionaries?
I think we have a lot of visionaries, but they are not allowed to envision and to implement it. Earlier we talked about this, the movement into an information age and megatrends. And I want to kind of walk through what these people that I interviewed represent in megatrends. Carl Ackerman is a Punahou, but he has a program reaching out to the public schools. Not just public over here and private over there. There are a lot of these little efforts going on where the public and private gets moved. Bruce Barnes is at the University of Hawaii Matsunaga Institute. He wants an ombudsman, and he has worked on how to solve problems in a university system using mediation rather than confrontation. That's a new idea. It's not bureaucratic. Everybody's equal in mediation. Mike Meyer, IT at HCC, he's trying to bring an older idea, culture of IT into the new world and the cloud and all these things that are cheaper and better. Frank Pottinger is an icon in Hawaii who for decades has been talking about project-based, inquiry-based, competency-based, developing curriculum the way students think. He's a visionary who has been there for years and years. And one reason I wanted to capture Frank is because his ideas are still valid for the next 50 years, right?
Experience counts.
Experience
is a big deal.
That's right. Catherine Payne was a long-term principal of Farrington. She's now head of the Charter Commission. What is that journey of going from one system to another? Because it's the journey between systems that's part of the next world. You know, we're not going to be stuck in one. Joan Husted, HSTA, but Joan is part of an institution and a group pushing for more power at the school level, even in spite of having a master contract for unions. In Joan's view, it's not the fact that the union exists, it's how we use it and give it flexibility.
It's managing the union.
That's
It's a
right.
Play on words,
Right.
but managing the union.
Sherry Nakamura, she's part of an organization that grew up over a protest over furloughs. It's how the community responds, a community anchor and authenticity about efforts like that. John Corey with Hawaii Youth Network, STEM education, computer education operating on the outskirts of the school day where most of the real innovation happens. Robotics is not a class. Robotics is a club. Corey Rosalie, the new head of HSTA, he has forced us to look at what we should be paying for education. Lila Berg has been a legislator, educator, has been pushing citizenship education, and reminds us that the mission of our schools and the university is larger than the people in the schools and the university. It's the entire society.
Absolutely right.
The obligation that citizens be well educated. You look at Deborah Zeisman with Good Beginnings Hawaii. You know, if you're not going to ensure that students enter school ready, you're already behind. And we have refused to make that commitment, right? Alan Oshima, head of HEI, not talking about Nextera. Alan, as a business person, a CEO, recognized the importance of education and has spent many, many years involved with the Education Commission of the states. This is an example of someone who recognized this is not my kuleana, but it is my kuleana. It's everybody's kuleana. Kukakalau started the Hawaiian Charter movement, right? And all these Hawaiian-focused charters are because of Ku, right? And her journey of trying to bring the values and the real tools that traditional Hawaiian learning can benefit all of us, Oike and Aloha and things like this, that's really crucial. And she is a leader, both a mover because she had power, a shaker because she's agitating, and a reformer because she's got the ideas, right? You know, Paul Turnbull, we mentioned, MidPAC. When you've got the money and you've got the freedom, what are you going to do with it? Not everybody knows what to do with it, but people like him do. Daryl Galera, with his Education Institute of Hawaii, pushing for more decentralized respect, trust, and power at the school level, and not assume somebody at the Liliuokalani building always knows better, is always more ethical, is always smarter.
Finish up because I have a question for you.
Okay, I want to mention Ann Botticelli. Ann Botticelli is communications with Hawaiian Air, but she's also on an organization that supports conversion charter schools. She also was at Kamehameha schools doing the same thing and started as a reporter. And this is a very important thing. Both her and Jessica Terrell, we interviewed, reporters. The media cannot walk away from this. And it can't be gotcha. It can't be just change and crisis. It's got to be, we have a...
That's so in many, many other instances in our community.
And that's why ThinkTech Hawaii is important, because you are actually stepping into a gap that the media created, right? And we have got to have a dialogue with the media, as the media, what their responsibilities are for an educated electorate, for citizenship education, get those cameras back in the state legislature, interview people, talk about issues. You can go through weeks during the legislative session sometimes, watch the local news, and never know what's going on. You know. So anyway, it's been
a terrific year. Those are terrific hosts you have. It's a great conglomeration of hosts, and one almost thinks that they ought to talk to each other on a regular basis, maybe even be a kind of official group where they can share their visions together so that nobody loses the benefit of the vision of the other. Anyway, I'd like you to come back as soon as you're done with the ledge this year. You'll be more experienced then. You can come back in June as soon as it's over, or even late May, and you can tell us, Jim, you can tell us how you really feel.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Aloha.